Okay, so you've probably heard the name John Donne, right? Maybe back in English class. But do you really know the man behind the poems? Because let me tell you, he was a walking, talking contradiction. His life was this incredible clash of passion and piety, of being a rebel and a man of God. So let's get into the two very different sides of this literary legend. And right here, this is the core puzzle of John Donne. On one hand, you have this young rebel, a guy writing some of the cleverest, most passionate, and yeah, erotic love poems you will ever read. And then, on the other hand, you have this deeply respected churchman, the actual dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. So how on earth does one guy become both? Let's dig in. To really understand the saint, you gotta meet the sinner first. So we're gonna start with his early days, a time when he was defined by this defiant, rebellious spirit, both in how he lived and what he wrote. From the moment he was born in 1572, he was basically an outsider. His family was Catholic, which in Protestant England at the time was a huge problem. Now, the guy was brilliant, no question. He went to both Oxford and Cambridge. But his principles cost him. He refused to take something called the Oath of Supremacy, which was like a loyalty pledge to the Protestant crown. And for that, they wouldn't give him his degree. So you can see the seeds of that rebellion were planted very early on. And all that defiant energy, it just poured right into his poetry. He became a master of this style that used something called a metaphysical conceit. Now, I know that sounds super academic and complicated, but the idea is actually pretty cool. He would take two things that seemed to have zero in common, like absolutely nothing, and then, with his incredible intellect, he'd build this elaborate argument to prove how they're actually connected. So, what does that actually look like? Well, to get a real feel for it, we have to talk about one of his most famous and, let's be honest, kind of scandalous early poems. We're talking about The Flea. And this poem is the perfect example of his wild style. So, a flea bites him, and then it bites the woman he's trying to woo. He then spends this crazy argument that because their blood is now mixed inside this tiny flea, they're practically married already inside this little living temple. It's totally outrageous, it's unbelievably clever, and it's just a masterclass in his far-fetched comparisons, mashing up the physical, the intellectual, and the spiritual in a way nobody had ever done. Now, his personal life was every bit as dramatic as his poetry. And there was this one single event that was about to completely shatter his world and force him down a totally different path. The year to remember is 1601. At this point, Donne is on the up and up. He's got a promising career in public service, he's ambitious, he knows the right people, everything's going according to plan. But then, one decision changes absolutely everything. He falls head over heels in love with Anne More. The problem? She was the young niece of his very powerful boss. So they get married in secret. And when her family finds out, well, the fallout is catastrophic. He gets fired, he's even thrown in jail for a bit, and his career ambitions are just gone. He and Anne were left totally broke for years. He summed up the whole disaster in this one famous, heartbreaking line. It's a clever little pun, of course, but you can feel the real pain behind it. His great act of love had completely, professionally and financially, undone him. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? But this total ruin actually became the foundation for an incredible transformation. From the ashes of his old life, a completely new John Donne was about to rise. He ended up joining the Anglican Church, and he took all of that intellectual firepower, all of that intensity he used to write about physical love, and he just aimed it at God. This is when he writes the amazing holy sonnets and these incredibly deep works of prose. And this new path, believe it or not, eventually led him to become the dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, one of the most respected religious jobs in all of England. The rebel had found a new cause. So why are we still talking about this guy 400 years later? It's because the things he was wrestling with, love, death, faith, how we're all connected, they're just as relevant today as they were back then. When you look at his major works, you can literally see his whole life story play out. You've got the passionate, witty love poems from his youth, like The Flea. Then you have him wrestling with death in his religious poems like Death Be Not Proud. And then there's his deep philosophical prose. It's all there. And maybe the most enduring idea he ever gave us comes from that prose. This line from his devotions is one of the most famous things ever written about how we're all interconnected. He's saying that none of us are truly alone. We're all part of something bigger, and what happens to one of us affects all of us. And that is such a powerful thought, isn't it? I mean, think about our world today with social media and global news, a world where we're supposed to be more connected than ever. What does this 400-year-old idea really mean for us right now? So that brings us right back to where we started. The passionate rebel who blew up his life for love, or the profound saint who stared into the deepest questions of life and faith? Which John Donne do you think speaks more to our world today? In the end, it's that tension, that contradiction between the two that makes him so absolutely fascinating.